हरे जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga Narayanam namaskritya नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम कैंटो 6 चैप्टर 5 टेक्स्ट 19 कालचक्रं भ्रमीतीक्ष्णं सर्वं निष्कर्षयज् यत् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत् कालचक्रं भ्रमीतीक्ष्णं सर्वं निष्कर्षयज् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत् कालचक्रं भ्रमीतीक्ष्णं सर्वं निष्कर्षयज् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत् किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत् भ्रमीतीक्ष्णं सर्वं निष्कर्षयत् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत् कालचक्रं भ्रमीतीक्ष्णं सर्वं निष्कर्षयत् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत् Ladies, please. कालचक्रं भ्रमीतीक्ष्णं सर्वं निष्कर्षयत् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत् कालचक्रं भ्रमीतीक्ष्णं सर्वं निष्कर्षयत् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत्। कालचक्रं भ्रमितीक्ष्णम् सर्वं निष्कर्षयत् जगत् स्वतन्त्रम् अबुधस्येह किमसत्कर्मभिर्भवेत्। Kalachakram, the wheel of eternal time. Bhrami, revolving automatically. Tikshnam, very sharp. Sarvam, all. Nishkarshayat, driving. Jagat, the world. Swatantram, independent. Not caring for the so-called scientists and philosophers. Abudhasya, of one who does not know this principle of time. Iha, in this material world, kim asat karma bhi bhavet, what is the use of engaging in temporary fruitive activities? Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Narada Muni had spoken of a physical object made of sharp blades and thunderbolts. The Haryashvas understood this allegory as follows. Eternal time moves very sharply, as if made of razors and thunderbolts. Uninterrupted and fully independent, it drives the activities of the entire world. If one does not try to study the eternal element of time, can he derive from performing temporary material activities? Purport. This verse explains the words Kshaurapavyam Swayam Brahmi, which especially refer to the orbit of eternal time. It is said that time and tide wait for no man. According to the moral instructions of the great politician Chanakya Pandita, Ayushakshana ekopi na labhya swarnakotibihi na che nirarthakam nitihi kachahanisthatodhika. Even a moment of one's lifetime could not be returned in exchange for millions of dollars. Therefore, one should consider how much loss one suffers if he wastes even a moment of his life for nothing. Like an animal, not understanding the goal of life, one foolishly thinks that there is no eternity and that his lifespan of 50, 60, or at the most 100 years is everything. This is the greatest foolishness. Time is eternal, and in the material world, one passes through different phases of his eternal life. Time is compared herein to a sharp razor. A razor is meant to shave the hair from one's face. But if not carefully handled, the razor will cause disaster. One is advised not to create a disaster by misusing his lifetime. One should be extremely careful to utilize the span of his life for spiritual realization or Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We've heard the story of this great sage who had a very, very long lifespan. And he had such a long lifespan that it's described that he would live a day of Brahma, uh, and only one hair from his body would fall. And he would be alive till all the hair on his body fell. And each hair would fall at the lifespan of Lord Brahma. That's 4,320,000,000 years. So he could shampoo as he liked and nothing would happen. And he would sit outside and perform his meditation. So his disciples once offered him some service and said, "Oh, Guru Maharaj, it is very hot, the elements are very brutal. Let us construct a nice bhajan kutir for you, a place that you can sit peacefully and do your meditation." He said, "Don't waste time, life is too short." So when he has so much time at his disposal, yet for him life was too short. Narada Muni is impressing upon the Haryashvas the importance of understanding how the only thing we have in this world is time. And the mystery is we don't know how much we have of it. So the only way to manage it is to make the best use of it. Now, here are these Haryashvas, 10,000 of them, brilliant young men, and they are performing austerities, really very, very difficult austerities. But for what? To fulfill the order of their father that they should become his assistants in populating the universe with progeny. So Narada, he sees an opportunity that, wow, such intelligence and such potential being wasted. And therefore he is trying to allow them to utilize their intelligence in the right way. The issue is not so much about brahmachari ashram or grahastha ashram. That's not the point necessarily being discussed per se. The issue is that when a human being who has this very specific capacity for understanding higher dimensional truths, animals don't have it, right? Animals don't inquire. Animals, they're only inquiring about uh, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Dharmo adhiko hi visheshatah dharmena hina pashubhir samana. That if one doesn't utilize the capacity of intelligence in inquiring about higher purpose of life, one is living animalistic life. So a human being has a great potential. And unfortunately, that great potential gets misused often. How is it misused? That the human being lives the same kind of lifestyle that the previous generations have lived. And in the name of economic development, they do the same things just a little differently. This is the point that Prahlad Maharaj, who's also a disciple of Narada Muni, he highlights. He calls it punah punah charvita charvananam. He calls it chewing the chewed. Something that has already been chewed, when you chew it again, there's no taste in it. So we get indoctrinated from our, I guess, tradition, seminal tradition. There's a particular type of indoctrination. The indoctrination about what is life meant for. So, for example, I come from a culture where education is given a lot of importance. When I had told my parents that I'd like to pursue cricket as a profession, they almost died of a heart attack. And before that little seed could even fructify, they put so much of TNT or whatever it's called to completely squash it, and and gave me a whole lecture on why I should be an engineer. And I went through engineering school, and till date, that seed for being a cricketer has not died. It's still there somewhere. But the point was, you need to get educated, because if you're educated, you can always find a job. If you have a job, you have financial flexibility. And if you have financial flexibility and financial strength, then you can buy the comforts of life. And the first thing that they want to see me do or anyone do is buy a house. Once you buy a house, that means you're really doing well. Well, that's good. There has something, some stability is there. There's a house. Why live on paying rent, etc.? Then the next thing is, if you have a car, oh, then that's a sign that you're doing really well, etc. So that's the point. That's the lifestyle they aspired for, or they lived within their means, and the next generation also lives a life like that within their means, although their means are now quite bigger. So it's the same program, one generation after another, one generation after another. And Narada Muni took objection to that. That here are these 10,000 young men who are really very intelligent, and they're not utilizing that capacity, but just following blindly into what His Holiness Romapad Maharaj calls a conveyor belt lifestyle. Conveyor belt means, you've seen at the airport, it just keeps going room, room, room. There are just different suitcases on it, and they all go through the same route. Right? Being at the baggage claim is like the most boring thing, because you just have to wait the same thing. One day I thought, instead of making those things black, why can't they make it nice colors, just for entertainment, different colors, whatever. But it's still the same thing. Even if you add color to it, it's still the conveyor belt. So a conveyor belt lifestyle means eating, sleeping, mating, defending. It's just nice polished ways, but it's still the same thing. And doing what they say normalized lifestyle. Right? We've heard it. At least I've heard it. Why can't you just be normal? Everyone else is doing this. Why do you have to do something very different? Why can't you just be normal? Normal means fitting a norm, a standard, and then the whole world sets a particular standard of lifestyle. That's the popular voice, vox populi. And Narada Muni didn't want a person to enter Grahastha life without understanding the real purposes behind it, not just blindly doing something. And that's what he's helping them with, so that they can understand what they're getting into, and if they are getting into it, how they should get into it or not. That's a choice they have to make. But the point is not to live the conveyor belt lifestyle. And one of the ways he's impressing this idea upon them, is by giving this allegory. And today's verse, the allegory talks about a revolving contraption, an object that moves at this particular speed, and it has these sharp razors attached to it. And these blades and thunderbolts, they cut. Kalachakram Brahmi Tikshnam. Kalachakra is the eternal wheel of time. And Brahmi means moving or revolving. And he says Tikshanam. In Bhagavad Gita, when describing foods in the mode of passion, one of the words Krishna uses is Tikshna. Tikshna means very sharp. So this wheel of time is very sharp. Why? One of the reasons it's very sharp, it doesn't matter who the person is. Maybe the emperor of the planet, maybe a tiny ant, maybe Indra, maybe a little insignificant germ called Indragopa. That wheel of time cuts everyone, cuts everyone's lifespan. Because no one is living an eternal life in the material realm. And this is required, it keeps cutting. Why is there death? One of the reasons there is death is, of course, we want to change the body into another body. But death is an indicator that nothing is eternal. It brings a hard stop to someone's life. It's an indicator. And it's not like there's no warning. What are the ways we are warned that there is death that's going to cut one's lifespan? Other people die. Old age. As soon as hair starts graying, that's an indication something is changing. And people live a life of denial. What's the denial? They put color to their hair to just say, I don't want to see it. They dye their hair. Or another denial is while it's happening to others, they somehow think, I'm doing something that's proper, that won't happen to me right away. Prabhupada calls it the sheep mentality or goat mentality. There are many goats standing in line, and at the end of the line is the butcher's knife, and the fellow is chopping one goat after another. But the goat next in line is happily eating grass, oblivious of what's going to happen to him next. This is called the goat's mentality. So this Kala Chakra is Brahmi Tikshnam. It just does not stop, and it is very, very sharp. It doesn't matter who the person is. Nobody in this material world is insured against time. Then he says, Sarvam Niskarshayat Jagat. Niskarshaya means to move. And this wheel of time moves the entire world. And he says Swatantram. Is it dependent on one? No. Is it dependent on any circumstance? No. Does any living entity, even including Lord Brahma, have the capacity to change it or slow it down? No. It moves, and it moves without any consideration of who the person is. So Prabhupada writes, time and tide wait for no man. And time is such a tricky thing that we can't notice it on a day-to-day basis. Although it's happening, there is ample evidence that time is moving. The passing of days and nights. And most persons have some way of recording it, noting it. We have a wristwatch and it keeps ticking. And we see the hands move. Yet, we tend to not take full advantage of it. And Prabhupada's quoting Chanakya Pandit. Chanakya Pandit says that even a moment of one's lifetime could not be returned in exchange for millions of dollars. First of all, most of us don't have $1 million to give in exchange for a moment. So even if we did, it would not help. That's the point. The amount of time we have to spend to gain $1 million and then buy a moment of life with it, This is a useless proposition. The real wealth is the wealth of time. And the real wealth is the wealth of time utilized properly. Just having a lot of time doesn't indicate a good thing. It is described that if you want something done, give it to a busy man or a busy person, because they'll get it done. A person who has nothing to do cannot get anything done because they're wasting time. And we have this human form of life, we're being reminded again and again that living like an animal, not understanding the goal of life, that's the point Narada Muni is addressing with the Haryashvas. That living animalistically, doing what's his name, Daksha wants you to do, without considering how is this going to help eternal life. He says, foolishly thinks that there is no eternity and that his lifespan of 50, 60 or even 100 years is everything. The best use of time is to use it for the future. In the sense that we use this lifetime or this life for eternal life. So what we do now and what we do in this life has great benefit of what will happen next. A person who does not know the value of time does one of many things. One cries about what's already gone, lamenting, crying, oh, I wish I had done like that in my life. I wish I could have done something differently. I should have, I could have, I must have. I wish I could. Whatever ways they lament, they're only looking at how time's already gone and they have not been able to do something. And while that is happening, time's already moving. That's one way of wasting or not utilizing time. Another way of not utilizing time is always looking into the future, hoping that something nice will happen to me, and not utilizing what they have right now. They always are looking into the future. In this lifetime. Oh, very soon things will change. Good things will also come. Good times will come. And they wait. And according to Narada Muni, these good things and bad things, there's already a share of them and they just keep coming one after the other. You don't have to do anything. Technically, we don't have to do anything in terms of looking for happiness. We don't have to do anything in terms of avoiding or looking for distress. They're already going to come anyway. Kalena sarvatra gabhira ramhasa. According to Narada Muni, by the course of time, these things will anyway come. No one's looking for distress. But does it come? Oh yes, of course. Happiness also comes without looking for it. But when one works very hard to counteract that which is already destined, then it is a little foolish. Counteract, materially speaking. So they're always hoping that the future will look so good. They're always anticipating a brighter future. And no one has seen the future. That's another way people waste time. They're hoping, or hankering as it's called. Then there are some persons who want to live in the moment, which is very nice. At least they have some sense of what's happening in life. But even living in the moment, but not utilizing the moment for the real purpose of life, is also a waste of time. Like the yogis or the impersonalists or some spiritual aspirants, as they call. They want to live in the moment. And part of living in the moment is also expressed sometimes as, hey, why worry about the future? You have this one life, have fun, enjoy it. Just take every moment as it comes and enjoy it. That is also a waste. Because moment not given for enjoyment. Or materially, I'm only materially speaking, enjoyment. Remember last time when I was speaking, Tuesday, or whenever I was speaking, we're talking about Charvak Muni. I like Charvak Muni very much because he always says, eat happily with ghee. Pranam Kartva Ghritam Pivet. Live a happy life. Even if you have to beg, borrow, and steal, doesn't matter. Eat with ghee and enjoy it. Life should be fun. Because he says, who has seen the future? Bhasmi bhutasya dehasa kim punaragataha. Once the body is burnt, you never come back. This is great. Live the moment. Live it now. As they say, right here, right now. That is also not a valuable use of time. It is better, but not proper. So the best use of time is to, where is compared? The best use of time is to understand the futility of living a fruitive lifestyle, a materialistic lifestyle, and utilize whatever moments we have been blessed with in service of Krishna. And to be able to value that time, we need someone to tell us how valuable time is. Now, there are some things that give us the maximum benefit when they are utilized properly. And when not utilized properly, they cause the greatest damage. For example, fire, electricity. Right? Fire, when utilized properly, we can reap so much benefit from it. We all have to eat. So food is cooked using fire or electricity. When we know how to carefully use it, electricity, we get so many benefits from it. Same things, if one is negligent in the use of those things, then the consequence is also very, very intense. Any one of us who's cooked, we know if we're negligent or something, we get a little burn here or something, scorched, little. Anyone, we all have that experience with fire. Fire burns. Prabhupada uses the example of a razor because the verse is about this moving object that is sharp with razors, razor-like blades. He says that a razor blade is very beneficial for shaving, which as Vaishnavas, we do make good use of it because we're meant to be clean. So we shave every day. Prabhupada is very particular whether we have to be clean. But the same razor, for some reason, if we are negligent or we are in a hurry, anyone had that? Of course, we have that. When we are in a hurry or something, or we're not paying attention, we get a little nick. So the same razor, if not used properly, it cuts. So he says that human life and understanding the value of time is like that. When utilized, it can give the greatest of benefits. When utilized properly, it gives the greatest of benefits. Even a little negligence and it cuts. And that negligence, not understanding the goal of life. So we hear about the goal of life. How many times from the time we enter Hare Krishna movement? Even before we enter the Hare Krishna movement, when we meet a devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or particularly followers of Srila Prabhupada, that's mostly the topic of conversation in different form or shape, but that's the whole conversation about the value of life, the value of human life. And from that time onwards, as we get to know more of the devotees, as we execute or start a little chanting and some other services, then we get initiated, second initiated, we become what we call fixed up devotees. We still hear the value of human life, how valuable time is, yet we often find that how time slips away from our hands. And it slips away for many reasons, right? Primarily, they all work as one unit. The bodily conception of life doesn't allow us to fully understand the value of time, or not having full attraction to Krishna yet, also we lose some time because then the mind drifts somewhere. We call that spacing out, or the body becomes tired and we kind of just slump, or we don't find the full way of engaging in service. We don't know what to do with our time, or we have a lot to do. We don't know how to manage all that we have to do, and still there is wastage of time. Yet there's a difference. There's a difference because even a in Krishna's service has some other kind of benefit. It's called eternal benefit. So sometimes we see that there are persons out there in the world who use their time very efficiently. They can give very fantastic seminars, which is fine. They're using their fantastic time management skills at doing what, though? Right? They make their life very efficient so that they can maximize sense gratification. So that's wonderful that they have a particular skill, but it's not being utilized properly. As devotees, we have the double responsibility. Not only should we have the skill, but also to use it properly. The skill is how to manage the services that we have, the responsibilities as a devotee. And what is it that we're using the time for? Of course, service to Krishna. So you take the example of Srila Prabhupada. What a way he used his time. Unbelievable. Not a moment wasted. Every moment was very nicely utilized in Krishna's service. Although the activities seemed so variegated. He went for morning walk, for example. But every moment was used in Krishna's service. He used to get his afternoon massages because his kidneys were not too strong and massages were helping him. But that was the time that he would meet with certain devotees, talk about temple management, answer correspondence, and answer all the letters, dictate responses to letters, etc. Slept, or we use the word rested for a few hours. In his case, it was technically rested only. 2 to 3 hours of rest, and up by midnight translating the Bhaktivedanta purports. Chanting his japa, talking to devotees, traveling around the world. Prabhupada said, for me, since I was a child, I never for a moment forgot Krishna. So the best way of using time is to use it to remember Krishna. And the more we become, the sign of advancement is our ability to use as much time as we have in Krishna's service. That's where we are getting to. Some time wasters. It's possible. It does happen. Yet, when we compare our lives prior to becoming devotees, even if we had used it well, it was for no use. And now we're trying to make sure that as much as possible we utilize our time in Krishna's service. Then these sharp blades of this wheel of time, they don't harm us. So one of the symptoms of a person in the stage of bhava is avyarthakalatvam, that they don't waste even a moment of time. All moments of time are used in Krishna. So Narada Muni is impressing on the Haryashvas, what are you doing? You have such intelligence, such potential, and all you want to do is live out your father's expectations that you're going to have children and populate this universe? Is that what life is meant for? He's not objecting to the ashram person, he's objecting to how their time is going to be utilized, what the purpose of their lives are going to be utilized, especially when they have such intelligence that just from an allegory they can understand it. And then the side point is parents have a tendency to live their dreams through their children. Something that they could not achieve, they will want their children to achieve for them. They vicariously achieve it through their children. And for them, that's another way whereby which it is extending. My dream is extended, someone else will fulfill it for me. And Narada is saying, don't do that. That's not the dream to fulfill. Or don't go into life without understanding the purpose of life. So he's preparing them. If one understands, then whatever ashram one takes, it doesn't matter. As long as it's purpose driven. And the purpose is to maximize the utility of the human form of life in becoming God conscious. So, some points. Any questions, comments, something you want to add? Here, in the last few sentences, there are many instructions by Prabhupada. When we're reading Prabhupada's purports, the way to decipher how there is an instruction is by there are some words of emphasis. You will see things like therefore, one should, one must, right? Those are instructional statements. So this purport has so much. For example, one is advised not to create a disaster by misusing his lifetime. One should be extremely careful to utilize the span of life for spiritual realization or Krishna consciousness. That's an instruction. And that we are aware of those instructions. And a quick final thing. Generally, in the life of a practicing devotee, our days are filled with activities of Krishna consciousness. So in that sense, our time is being utilized fairly properly. But the places where the sense of time being utilized is lost is in at least two places. I can't think of more. I'm sure there are. One is spacing out. Although our hands and legs are definitely moving, we tend to space. And if we notice where we space to, we'll notice that it's somewhere in the past or somewhere in the future. And part of that spacing out is, even as devotees, we create a nice picture for ourselves of how nice it will be in the future. Right now I am scrubbing the spot, but this will not be forever. One day there will be relief from this. One day I will be preaching wonderfully here and there. One day I'll be able to speak something very nicely. One day it'll look like that. Oh, there is hope. One day there. And the second area where we see time not being utilized so well is when we transition from one service into another. We've ended one and we have to go to another. The time in between sometimes is not so well utilized. If we know how to move from one service to another, then we tend to use the time nicely in Krishna. I mean, these are not bad things, We're still utilizing our time in Krishna's service, but these are areas of fine tuning that are important. And the third piece, now I remember, is what we call discretionary time. Discretionary time is that time where we don't have a particular service happening. We don't have anything particular someone's engaged us in, and we tend to not know what to do with it. That's a third area. Okay, any comments, questions? Don't feel obliged.
I believe it's in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. It talks about 5 elements or something like that.
No,
It's
five
like,
topics of the Bhagavad Gita.
is it 5 topics? Yes. And so, which one is the eternal? Can you recite the 5 and tell me which one is eternal?
There are 5 subject matters in the Bhagavad Gita. The soul, eternal. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, eternal. Time, eternal. The material nature, eternal. And karma, not eternal.
Eternal. Okay. And also, Krishna is time, right?
Krishna is time. It
Or
means
time
that
is Krishna.
it is Krishna's energy. It is Krishna's energy that allows for the wheel of time to move. And he says that I appear to anyone and everyone in the form of death, by which I take away everything from them. And that taking away from them, we should understand, is not like a cruel gesture, it's a merciful gesture. Gesture is, don't waste time in this temporary things. Think about the eternal. Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Brahma Jigyasa means think about eternal time. Or we say Asatoma Sadgamaya. That's a famous Buddhist. It is Vedic, but the Buddhists, they repeat it. Sadgamaya, that you should go towards eternal and not the temporary. Now, in the material world, we experience time in one way, and in the spiritual world, the experience of time is in a different way. In the spiritual world, there exists what we call eternal time. Time is eternal here as well, but the experience of it is from the creation of the universe to the annihilation. And when the gap between and another creation, there is no concept of time. At least as we might be aware of it. In the spiritual world, we hear that time works differently. Nimeshardhyakyo va vrajiti nahi yatrapi samaya. This is from the Brahma Samhita, that even a short moment of time is eternity. Okay. Yes, Terence.
Yes, you use the word indoctrinated.
Indoctrinated.
Yes.
Yes, there's a room downstairs.
Yeah, from a material perspective, we say we're indoctrinated into a culture in the West because we're on a specific time zone as far as working, and it's a form of indoctrination. My question in regards to that, I was looking on the dictionary on the internet, and one of the examples it uses for indoctrination, it says to instruct in a doctrine or ideology dogmatically, to teach or inculcate, and to imbue with learning. So my question to you, and in that essence, could there also be forms of spiritual indoctrination as well?
Absolutely. When, what are they called? Deprogrammers. They were after Prabhupada's disciples. And some of the disciples would come back and complain to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, our parents are objecting to what you're teaching because they're telling us that you're brainwashing us. Hmm? And Prabhupada said, "What's wrong? Your brains are dirty. I am washing them." So indoctrination exists even in spiritual circles. Indoctrination in the sense of teaching the principles. However, on in a colloquial sense, the parlance or the connotation of indoctrination nowadays has taken a very negative connotation, right? If you read in Prabhupada's books, he says cult of Krishna consciousness, right? In the modern context, if you see the word cult, everyone's going, oh boy, this is crazy. You understand? So the word indoctrination over time has come to being like a dirty word, like, oh, indoctrinated. No, but there is proper indoctrination and there is improper indoctrination. So the improper ways in which religious teachings are indoctrinated are like this: we are the best, and anything else is garbage. Or if someone doesn't align with what we are saying, we can kill them because they are whatever, infidel, whatever they call it. Or makes us insensitive to other angles of vision. Or an indoctrination that now other angles of vision doesn't mean we have to buy into that idea, but the real way of indoctrination is we're supposed to become brahmanas. Brahmana means broad-minded. Sometimes indoctrination makes a person very insular. Insular is very closed-minded. That is called fanaticism, fundamental, very fanatic. But a Brahmana is broad-minded. Broad-mindedness means they cut through the artificiality and try to learn the essence of things. So Lord Chaitanya has told us, amanina manadena is to have that broad mind, that we see everyone as spirit souls. They may be having this form of worship, totally this one. Even atheists are also parts and parcels of Krishna. So an indoctrination that makes a person closed-minded is naturally harmful. They get to see only the differences. There's a difference between that and discerning. Go ahead.
I guess in adding to that, sometimes we we say from a practical standpoint that Maya or energy is contradictory to the spiritual elements,
That is true.
and you know that's why it's important for us to stay engaged, or at least try to stay engaged 24/7 during the day. But I've also heard it said that someone that's on a specific stage doesn't see a difference between the spiritual and material energy
Correct.
because it's all coming from Krishna.
Right.
And you use the example that when people are working outside and like let's say a material aspect of performing duties, that they may be doing that from a more material growth standpoint, but and I guess in essence of what I'm asking is, with each of our natures, it may be particular for us to work in some type of activity,
Sure.
which can also cultivate spiritual knowledge as well. So I guess in bringing both points together, we can also try to go about seeing how we interact with with the material world as a way of imbibing the same spiritual principles that we're taught, as opposed to seeing them as contrasts
Yes.
and going along with that same aspect of not being closed-minded.
And if you notice, that's the reason I started my class the way I did. Is not earth, water, fire, air, ether, and some combination of it. That is not Maya. Is the forgetfulness of Krishna. So one may be doing so-called spiritual activities and forgetting Krishna and maybe in super Maya. While one may be doing so-called material activities but is remembering Krishna and is very spiritual. One may be doing spiritual activities thinking of Krishna and is in a spiritual state. One may be doing so-called material activities forgetful of Krishna and they're in Maya. So Maya is not just what activity, but Maya is the state of consciousness with which that activity is being performed. And the second aspect of Maya is whatever that thing is when we don't see its connection to Krishna, it acts in a way different. That's called Maya. Like this is paper and ink and has a plastic dust cover. But as soon as we touch this book, we place it to our head, we fold, we see this very much connected to Krishna. But the moment we see a physics textbook or something, we say, or it may be a very harmful book that says how to kill people, let's say. I'm not saying that that is spiritual. We make that distinction. But the point is, it's by itself is neutral. It is what we look at. Even that material energy is Krishna's. So a spiritualist doesn't exploit that energy or doesn't run away from it. He uses it in Krishna's service. He or she. That's important. To say, oh, this is all Maya. I'm going to go into the forest. Fine. Maya is in the forest also. I was recently reading, it said that for a person who's sexually agitated, for example, because when we say Maya, that's the first thing we think of, right? Oh, it said that it is the lust is such a thing that even if you take a wooden pole and put a sari around it, fellow's mind can get disturbed about it. That is how it works. And if you look at earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? They don't have any particular form per se. But the moment earth, water, fire, air, ether are in the shape of a woman or a man, then the mind gets all agitated. So Maya is in how the consciousness sees things separate from Krishna. That is Maya. That which is not, because nothing is separate from Krishna. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. How can one draw people in to a society which may seem like, for less of a better word, kind of far away from where they are, maybe more so removed from their understanding from a cultural aspect, but still, as you say, imbibe the understanding that we're all part and parcel of Krishna. So therefore, this person, no matter where they are, from a practical standpoint, they too can also come to a certain level of God understanding and realization. But maybe not so much from preaching, but just from reaching a person. How can one go about trying to establish some type of
There may be
connection
many
or
ways.
relationship with them?
There may be many ways. One way that I've learned to appreciate is friendship. When people can make friendships with the devotees, friendships can start just being amicable to each other. That's the beginning. That's where there's what Vaisheshika Prabhu calls conscious connection. It's not like we have to do the same things that they want us, that they are doing. That only if we go to the bars, yeah, we're friends. No, it's a connection that we make with people at that moment or every time we meet them. For example, if you're distributing books, chances that we'll see the person again is a little rare, but in that exchange, there can be a very strong conscious connection. Distribute prasadam and see. Go out on Krishna lunch one day or a few days and see. The same people return, they recognize our faces, they smile, they say hello, whatever. You make a conscious connection. We're not asking them to change their ways of life. But that conscious connection allows for the mind to become open. And we meet guests on a Sunday, whatever. There may be so many new people, but when we say hello to them, that connection makes the mind open. Shreya Kairava Chandrika, with the lotus of the heart fully blossoms. Because when we come in contact with Krishna through his holy name, then our hearts open. Similarly, on behalf of Krishna, when we make a conscious connection, the heart will open a little bit. And from then on. So it's now said, same thing said in a philosophical way, if you will, is no one will hear from another person, or we will not hear from the disciplic succession unless there is submission in us. And submission is cultured through hearing. And before that submission through hearing is cultured, there's another way of creating that submission. You give prasadam or a book. Because they are taking, the submission is begun. It may be in a very small way, but the fact that you're giving something and they're taking something, that is submission. Submission is we're taking, right, from the spiritual master and the Guru Parampara. So such ways of reaching out, giving something, will begin. Yes, Jitendra Prabhu, I've noticed your hand up.
Speaking of Vaisheshika, I remember when he was giving his presentation, the last thing he said is, leave him with a good impression. And then we were talking, Krishna consciousness addresses the psychology of the, and there's one phrase that comes to my mind is, coulda, woulda, shoulda. You know, people say that. And then it's broken down how people are wasting their lives, you know, like in childhood and, you know, middle age. And then in old age, you know, they're infirm and, you know, it's just like their whole life. And then sleep is another category of the four categories of wasting time.
Yes.
So that just kind of came to mind. And there was a book.
On that topic, for a person who is spiritually awake, for them sleep is a waste of time. For those who are practicing, sleep is a good way of utilizing the time that when we are awake. Otherwise, what happens is if we fight it and say, oh, I heard in class, sleep is a waste of time, then we'll use the entire japa period for it, and Bhagvatam class for it, and after prasadam, like that.
Also, devotional service, sleeping is also devotional service.
We like that one. We like that one very much. And Prabhuji, I'm serving. How I'm serving by falling asleep is, I'm not causing any damage. Would you rather that I'm awake and cause damage? No. Sorry.
I remember a teacher used to say, if you had a brain, you'd be dangerous. There was a book that you might say the hippies would read. It was a very popular book. It was called Be Here Now.
Yes.
And they presented it to Srila Prabhupada, and he said, ours is get out now. Get out of the material world now. Don't loiter around, you know. Hare Krishna.
I'll end with that. The idea of the materialists is to utilize our time in making this a wonderful place. And our Prabhupada's teachings is to utilize our time to leave this place nicely. Not the place nicely, we leave nicely. And end with the Prabhupada story. There was one Swamini lady who had this wonderful idea of creating a conference of all religious and spiritual leaders to get together to discuss how this material world can be made a better place. So the followers came to meet Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, like he was in that particular mood, he challenged them. And he said, what do you mean? How can you make this place a happy place? When this place, Krishna says, Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam, this place is designed for misery, how can you make it a happy place? No, Swamiji, when we learn to live peacefully in harmony with each other, Prabhupada said, no, Krishna says Dukkhalayam. And he gave an example. He said, in the house, there is a bathroom. So like that, the spiritual world, 1/4 of it is the material realm. So he said, there's a big house, in that there is the bathroom. Now, it's not that we don't use the bathroom, we use it, but we don't settle there. We get our business, we finish our business, and we get out. It's not like we sit there, we eat there, that's where we are doing everything. No, we finish our business and we get out. So he said, just because you put some perfume in the bathroom, it doesn't become a wonderful place to stay. You should get out of it. So that's how he was impressing. And the same note, Prabodhananda Saraswati at the same time says, Vishwam Purna Sukhayate, that this whole universe can be a beautiful place when one remembers Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagvatam ki jai.